Hey folks, Eric from Another Voice with Jason and Eric, brought to you by your Greenville Neighborhood Pharmacy, Fowler Pharmacy, 1908 Lawrence Road. It's official. The federal court upheld South Carolina's voter photo ID law. It is now law. Well, almost law. It cannot be implemented until 2013 because the judges rightly decided that to try to implement it in this less than a month away from the election would not work. I want to talk about this for a little bit. We have, over the course of since this law was passed, talked about it over and over again, but I want to break this down. First of all, I want to make a point about something. A lot of the people who support this law talked about how that federal government's sticking its nose in the South Carolina business. We got to get the federal government out. I just want to note that the court that ruled in favor was a three-judge federal judge panel, a federal court. The federal court made the decision that a lot of you who like this law supported. As I've said on other issues, especially in talking about Governor Haley's stories that she tells, the federal government did its job. As part of the Voting Rights Act, South Carolina, among other states who had a horrendous record on voting rights, are required that every change to the voting laws for these states have to be approved by the Justice Department or a federal court. This law was submitted to the Justice Department. The Justice Department did its job. It felt that it was wrong. Now, you and I can disagree with that decision, but the justice system did its job. It was appealed through the proper process of law. And the end result, you who like the law won. The process worked. Maybe you would have liked the process to be shorter. That's fine. But the process worked. Now, let's talk about this. The judges ruled, and it was three judges elected by both Democrat and Republican. It was a unanimous decision. They felt that the law did not have any discriminatory purpose or any any disproportionate discriminatory effect. Now, we talked about how people will be disenfranchised, or people who are poor, who are elderly, who have no transportation, are going to have difficulty getting there. The judges ruled that some updates to this law, some tweaks to this law, which would provide IDs for free, which wouldn't necessarily require the use of a birth certificate, which for a number of elderly people, and even for some poor folks who don't keep good records, people with money sometimes don't keep good records. Until recently, I didn't have my birth certificate because it got stolen. People's houses burned down, flooding. The birth certificate issue was difficult, but the law has been tweaked to allow the use of other things besides the birth certificate. Every county has 2 locations where a free ID could be picked up. The judges ruled that the changes and the tweaks in this law made it so that it wasn't disproportionately discriminatory against race. I all along said I thought the biggest issue was the elderly, not race. But there's some statistics here. 96% of whites and 92 to 94% of blacks already possess the approved IDs. South Carolina driver's license, South Carolina state-issued IDs, passport, military ID, or a new voter registration photo ID. So majority of us have that. So what do we do about the 8 to 6 or 4% that don't? There's means to take care of this. Judge Brett Kavanaugh, who wrote the opinion, stated that that preserving the integrity of a state's electoral system is a valid state interest, even in the absence of widespread fraud. This is where I disagree with the judge and the panel. Yes, we should be preserving our electoral system. Yes, it is a state interest, but not in the absence of actual fraud. This is one of the two sticking points for me, or three sticking points for me. We haven't demonstrated that there's actually fraud. This is a solution to a problem that doesn't exist. In a previous, I think on the show, I went through the steps that would be required for a person to actually commit fraud in this manner. And it is extensive, the difficulty with which it would have required to make fraud in this. So I disagree with Judge Kavanaugh in the sense that if there's no evidence of it, that you should still do this law. But it's the law of the land, and now we have to follow it. I will say that one of the biggest issues I have with this law, and something that we should deal with now, we need to contact our senators and representatives so that the first thing they do when they get back in session is fix this law. What do you mean fix this law? This was supposedly set to protect the integrity of the election. And they included two IDs that destroy the integrity of our electoral system. Military ID and passports. Now, why does that destroy it? I'm a poll worker, been for many years. When a person walks up to me and wants to vote, I'm looking to see if the person in front of me is registered to vote in the precinct where they are. Let's say the man comes to me, his name is John Smith, and he hands me a military ID or a passport. Neither of those have his current address. In my book, I have 3 John Smiths. There's 2 in the precinct next to me, 5 over on another precinct, 2 in another precinct. How do I verify that the John Smith, whose picture on the passport and the person standing in front of me match, how do I verify that he is the John Smith who votes because he lives on 12 Mockingbird Lane? I can't. I don't have the ability to with his passport or with his military ID, unless I require him to show me another form of ID that has his current address on it. That's not in the law. So what you need to talk to your senator and your representative about, and what I'm talking to my senator and representative about, is amending this law to either remove the voter military ID and passport, or to require that in order to use a military ID or a passport, you must show additional identification that demonstrates where your current address is. I'm not going to get into this whole, is this a big conspiracy by people to stop Obama from getting elected? I'm not going to get into this. I read someone on Facebook today said, yes, finally, well, maybe we can get some Republicans elected in this state. And I was kind of like, what? The state is awash in Republicans. It is a huge Republican stronghold. The state will vote for Mitt Romney. So I don't know where he was talking about. But this is the law. And this is what I want to follow the example that I've said when it comes to following the rule of law. I don't like this law. I think it's unnecessary. I think it's causing people who have voted legally for decades. And let me make this point. People say, well, you should show an ID when you vote. I agree. And a voter registration card is a legal, government-issued, identity-backed identification form. People aren't being able to come in and say, hey, I'm John Smith, I want to vote. They have to show the government-issued ID. It doesn't have a picture on it. But it's the rule of law now. Starting in 2013, we're going to have to do this. So what I do urge you to do is to contact your senators and representatives and get them to change the law in regards to military IDs or passports. Either remove them or require the addition of another form of identification so that the poll workers can make sure that the person standing in front of them whose picture matches them is actually the person on the books and who's legally registered to vote in that precinct. All right. I encourage you to come on October 22nd to our candidate forum being held at the University Center, 6 to 8 p.m. We've invited all the candidates. We've got 16 confirmed candidates. You'll also be able to check your polling place and check what districts you're in. And don't forget, October 27th, the grand opening of Personal Defense Outfitter in Travelers Rest, 12 South Main Street, Travelers Rest. All right, folks, let's keep our eyes on the ball and keep our politicians straight.